All right, so over the course of the past few years, I've been progressively decreasing the amount of time that I spent studying. And what I found is that not only have I been spending less time studying, I've been getting the same grades that I used to get, and I've been enjoying the work a whole lot more. So in this video, I want to share with you my best practical advice, actual action steps that you can take in order to get your studies done in a shorter but more intense period of time. So in order to actually get your studying done in that shorter period of time, in order to speed up the amount of studies you do, you need to understand that the output, okay, the amount of studying you get done, the amount of work you complete, okay, is essentially going to be equal to the amount of focus you put in times the amount of time you put in, okay? And so what that means is that, let's say you sit down and you work very intensely, you study, you focus really hard for, 2-3 hours, okay? That means that although you only put in, 2 hours of work, you didn't put in too much time. Because you had that high intense focus, okay, the output is still going to be high. And so if you compare this to how most people study, okay, most people study where they have a fairly low focus, okay? Maybe they're doing something else at the same time. Maybe they're just, not very focused on the work in front of them, but they have a fairly low focus, okay? And because of that, they end up having to sit all day studying and not getting much work done, okay? And that's because the focus was low, but the time was high, okay? So essentially, right, if you want to get some amount of work done, you either need to input a high focus in a low period of time, or if you have a low focus, that means you need to input a high amount of time, okay? And so you need to choose which one do you want to input high, okay? Do you want to be having to sit down and have your high input as the time, or do you want to sit down and have, the high input as the intensity, the focus, okay? Once you understand that, that's when you can start to understand, that's when you can start to, figure out how to get your studies done faster, okay? It's something that, intuitively it makes sense, but oftentimes it's something that we forget, okay? And so I think it's really important because to me, it's one of the biggest things that I see other students doing, and I know that it's just not an enjoyable experience, okay? It's not enjoyable sitting at that desk for, 6 hours, but feeling like you're not accomplishing anything, but feeling like you're so slow and sluggish and tired all the time. So that's the big mindset that you need to adopt. It's that your output, okay? The amount of work you get done, the amount of studies you get done is going to be equal to the focus you put in times the time you put in, okay? And so if our goal is to get our studies done in less period of time, in a shorter period of time, all we need to do is figure out, okay, how can we put as much intensity into our focus as possible, okay? And by doing that, then we can get our work done in a shorter period of time, okay? And then now you're not studying for 12 hours a day, okay? You can sit down, bang out your work in 3 hours or in 2 hours in the morning, in 4 hours in the morning, okay? And then you're done, okay? Then you've maximized the amount of work that you've got done in the day, but you've only spent a third of the day, a quarter of the day, the first few hours of the day doing so, okay? And then that leaves you with however much time you want to do after to go to the gym, to see your friends, to do the other things that keep you regulated, which then would allow you to come back and work intensely again the next day, okay? So that's what the goal of this video is going to be. It's to help you adopt that mindset of how can we focus more intensely so that we can get the work done in less time. So when we're trying to leverage our focus, one of the biggest things that you can do is learning to leverage the high energy hours that you have in the day. You probably know that your energy, it's not the same during the day, okay? You're going to be at some points feeling like really motivated, really high energy, able to sit down and do the work. And then at other times you just, it's the last thing you want to do, right? Maybe you come home from school, it's 5 p.m. and you have to, start studying for this exam that you have a few days later, okay? But you just can't bring yourself to do it because this is a low energy time for you. And so one of the biggest things to do to, maximize our focus, to leverage our focus, is to leverage the periods of time in a day where your focus is naturally going to be higher. And for me personally, and for a lot of people that I know, the best way to do this is to leverage your mornings, okay? When you wake up in the morning, you're refreshed. You just had hopefully a proper sleep, okay? You haven't done work for 8 hours because you've been sleeping for 8 hours. So your brain is refreshed and it's ready to get back to work. It's ready to do something, right? And so the best thing you can do is to leverage these hours, okay? The first 3 hours of your day, hopefully, unless you have to get to class or you have to do this or you have to do this, okay? Ideally, you can spend this time working, okay? You're not spending this time getting up and using these hours to consume your social media, okay? If that needs to be a thing, that's later in the day, okay? Let's just understand that these morning hours are very important, okay? These morning hours are where you can really make or break the day. And you probably know this intuitively, right? Maybe one morning you woke up, it's a weekend, and you sat in bed for like 3 hours scrolling on Instagram or watching YouTube or something, okay? Because you didn't leverage that morning, you probably felt really bad after. You probably, you weren't feeling good about the time, you weren't feeling good about how you spent your time in the morning, and now you're feeling bad about the day and everything else you still need to get done because you haven't done anything, right? It's not an enjoyable experience. So we instead of wasting that morning, we want to leverage it, okay? We want to use it and spend this energy, spend this refreshed time on work. So maybe you can't do this every day, okay? Maybe, you know, a few days a week you have class in the morning and you can only do this on the weekends and the other 2 days a week, okay? That's fine. The idea is that when you have the opportunity, let's use this time, let's use this important time in the morning and spend it well, because I promise you, 2 hours of work in the morning is equal to, 4 hours of work midday when you've already done, a few things already. So in the morning, okay, let's hit a quick morning routine. Let's not go on our phone, okay? Because going on your phone is going to condition your brain to not want to do the work, right? You're about to sit down and get some work done, right? And so you don't want to be, priming your brain to not want to work, which is what will happen if you immediately go on your phone, or if you use, this 20 minutes before you start your work, you're going to just check Instagram or you're going to watch a YouTube video, okay? Doing that will ruin this morning work block. It will ruin it. So let's wake up. You don't need to get up and make breakfast and do all these things, okay? Let's wake up, make your bed, go get some fresh air, and then run through a few other things that are maybe not highly stimulating things, but that you like to do in the morning that get you feeling good. And then let's sit down, okay? Let's sit down and get some work done, okay? Because the faster you can do that, the less amount of your brain has been spent before you're sitting down to work, right? So you spent less energy, and you can sit down and take advantage of this high energy time to get your work done. Not eating breakfast right after you wake up and right before you get to work is also a useful thing that you can do, because it reduces the amount of time from when you wake up, get your tasks done, and then sit down to work. It shrinks that down, and so you can get to that work faster. You can knock off your big tasks faster. But also when you eat something before you work, especially if you're gonna get up and eat like toast and cereal and all these things, okay, it's gonna cloud your judgment, okay? It's gonna make you like 10-20% not as smart when you're busy digesting this food, okay? It takes energy to do that. And so the best thing you can do if you are trying to, have maximal energy right when you wake up is get to work, okay? So get up, run through your morning routine, and then you sit down and work, okay? You're trying to knock off this big task in the morning when your energy is highest. And the other benefit of this, okay, we just talked about a few in terms of work, like why it's good to do this in order to get the work done. But also when you get your big task done early, okay, maybe you had this project that you need to do and you sit down for 2 hours and you get it done right in the morning, okay? When you do that, that means you don't need to worry about it for the entire rest of the day, okay? Instead, if you said, okay, I'm gonna do this in the evening, I'm gonna do this at 6 p.m., okay? All day, there's gonna be that little thought in your mind, okay? It's like, okay, I'm at the gym, maybe I'm hitting a good workout, and then the thought comes up and it's, okay, I still have to do that project later. I still have to spend that 2 hours later to do the project, okay? And then maybe you go home and you're making lunch and the thought comes up again, and it's, I still have to, sit down and do that work later, okay? And so if you get the work done early, you don't have to deal with these thoughts of, I still have to do this, okay? It's not, I still have to do this. It's, this thing is done now. Now I can spend my time how I want. Now I can do the other things that I want to do. Now I can go to the gym. Now I can spend my time with my friends. Now I can do these other things, okay? And so that's the other bonus of just dedicating this morning time, having this morning time as an important time for you to sit down and get some work done, okay? It's a valuable time, okay? And if you take advantage of it, it's going to pay dividends, right? Because you freed up so much time and you freed up space in your brain. So the rest of the day, you don't need to be thinking about these things, okay? You've knocked it off. You've got your first win early, and then that can carry you through. That's momentum that you can take throughout the rest of the day. So that's the first key to, leveraging focus, is to leverage the early hours of the day, the morning, okay? When you have that high energy, and in those times, you're going to naturally have more focus, okay? And with that more focus, again, when we have more focus, when we have more intense focus on our work, that means that the amount of time we need to spend studying goes down. So that's the first piece of practical advice for, how you can leverage the focus to shrink down that amount of time that you're studying. It's, taking advantage of those morning hours. And the next piece of advice for that is to know what you're doing, okay? You need to know what you're going to do when you're sitting down to work, okay? I just talked about having this morning time where you sit down and work, okay? That's nice, okay? But if you don't know what you're gonna do, if you don't have a plan for what you're gonna do, you're gonna sit down and you're probably gonna waste, you're probably gonna spend the first 20 minutes of that time figuring out what you're gonna do, okay? And then you're gonna spend the next 20 minutes trying to get in the process, trying to get in the focus of the work that you're set out to do, okay? If you don't know what you're going to do, if you don't have any intentions or plans or goals, okay, it's gonna slow down your work by, 20, 30, 40%, depending on how it is that day, okay? So it's very important to have a plan, okay? And what I mean by that is what work are you going to do? Don't just say, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to study for 6 hours today, okay? What are you studying, okay? Which class are you studying, okay? Which material in that class are you studying? How much, time are you going to spend on this material? Or how much time are you going to spend on this chapter, on this chapter, on this chapter, right? Understand and tell yourself what you're going to do, okay? Have an idea of this, the day before, okay? Tomorrow I want to get these 3 things done, okay? And now going into that work session, now you know what you're going to do, okay? You're not wasting your time thinking about it. You're not wasting your time, your energy, deciding which one I'm going to do. Do I have time for this one? Do I have time for this one? It's just sitting down and it's just carrying through. It's just executing on what you did the day before and what you decided previously. The other thing that you need to know is understand, how long are you going to work for, okay? Don't just sit down and say, I'm going to work, okay? How long, okay? Maybe if you just say that, if you just say, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to work, okay? You might work for 20 minutes and then get tired and stop working. You might work for 50 minutes and get tired and stop working. Or you might work for 1 hour and not realize that your work is slowly getting worse and worse and worse. And then now you've worked 4 hours and the last 3 hours have been worthless because you were getting, such minimal work done, your focus was so dispersed that you weren't actually getting anything valuable done, right? So know and understand and decide beforehand, how long are you going to work for, okay? For me, I set a timer, okay? Setting a timer is something I've done recently. It's a very, very valuable tool, okay? You're not sitting down without a, idea of how long you're sitting and working for. You're sitting down and you search timer and you open that tab in a browser and you set that timer for however long you're going to work, however long you're planning on focusing for, okay? And now, whenever you look up, whenever you get, a little bit tired of your work, or you lose focus for a second, you look at that timer and you say, okay, there's only 20 minutes left. I only need to study for 20 more minutes. I only need to focus for 20 more minutes. And that allows you to just push through instead of, having some arbitrary, hand wavy amount of time that you're going to study for where there's no, distinct period of time, where there's no end time, right? If there's no end time, you don't really know, how much you need to work for. Plus, having that timer set, it forces you, it provides that little extra incentive to get this work done during this period of time. It's saying that, hey, I set 55 minutes and my goal is to get these first 2 sections written in this lab report. Because you've set that time, because you've had that intention, you just need to now follow through it. And whether or not you follow through each time, that varies, okay? It's not always going to happen. But just setting that intention increases the likelihood of you following through on that. It increases the amount of work you're going to get done because you have that little extra incentive that's pushing you to get, hey, these 2 sections are going to get done in this 55 minutes, or this practice test is going to get done in this hour and 20 minutes, okay? By doing this, you are providing a little bit extra. You're reducing the friction, okay? And you're providing your brain less exits, less easy ways out from studying, okay? If you don't do this, you might study for 20 minutes and say, oh, that's good enough, and you're done, okay? Or you might study for 20 minutes and you might see, okay, I've got so much work left to do. And then you get overwhelmed and start procrastinating because of that, right? So the solution to that is, hey, let's decide how long we're studying for, okay? Set that intention, okay? I'm studying for this period of time. Open that tab in the browser and start it, okay? And then you're focusing and you're intensely studying on that material, on that information that you had planned to go through before, okay? Having this stuff written down as a distinct thing instead of just being so, hand wavy is really something that's going to help you shrink your work time down, okay? Because it forces you to study more intensely with more focus, which again, we talked about earlier. That is what lets you get this stuff done in less time. And also as one more point, I just want to emphasize how important it is that you do not pick up your phone once, okay, during this study session, okay? Let's say what I do is I say, hey, I'm going to study for 3 hours, okay? And so I do 50 minutes on, 10 minutes off, 50 minutes on, 10 minutes off, 50 minutes on, 10 minutes off, and I'm done, okay? That's my morning block that I've been doing and that I've been liking, okay? It's so important that you do not look at your phone, that you do not touch your phone, that you do not pick up the phone, you don't answer a single text, you don't look at a single notification during that 50 minutes that you're studying, okay? Because doing so pulls you out of the focus, okay? The whole idea was that we're going to study intensely for this 3 hours. We're going to study intensely for this 50-minute block first, okay? And then once you're done, okay, now we can spend our time, differently, okay? But this period of time is dedicated to your work. We're dedicated to the work so that you can have this work done, so you can get this done more quickly and have that time afterwards to spend how you'd like, okay? But every time you pick up the phone, every time your focus gets drawn away, even for something as little as what you think is just picking up your phone, you are defeating the purpose of this whole idea of increasing your focus, okay? When you pick up your phone, you've just lost focus, okay? And it takes time to get back. It's not 10 seconds, it's not 20 seconds. There's a study that says it's like 15 minutes to get back to focus after you've lost it, right? Every time you pick up your phone, you are just, completely destroying the purpose of this idea, of this method of just sitting down and getting this work done quickly, okay? And so I just want to emphasize how important it is. Best case scenario, you're locking it away for the full 3 hours, okay? If you can't do that, all right, can we do that first block without it? And then maybe in that 10 minutes, you can quickly look at something. But ideally, okay, you're putting your phone away in a different room or in a cabinet, or, I place mine in this cabinet right here. It's completely out of sight. It's not even something that I can see. I don't hear the notifications because it's on Do Not Disturb. And doing this is so important. There's like things online that show that even having your phone not even on you, just in the same room as you, makes you have worse focus, okay? So we want to be increasing your focus so you can just, be done the work quicker, right? That's all what you want. That's what all of us want, right? We want to get our studies done quicker so we have more time to spend on the other important aspects of our life. So in order to do this, you got to make the sacrifice, okay? You got to take that little bit of discomfort of just placing the phone in another room, putting it on Do Not Disturb, putting it in the cabinet, okay? You got to take the sacrifice. It is a little bit uncomfortable. It is, okay? I get that. But it's a sacrifice that you're making, all right? Because right now, you're overwhelmed. You have, so much studies to get done. You have all these things to get done. You don't want to be studying for 8 hours a day. If you do that, you're going to be overwhelmed anyways, because now you don't have the time to do the other things that you want to do in your life. So we've taken we understand that you're overwhelmed, okay? We know that. Me and you, we both know that. We understand that there's discomfort there. It's not enjoyable being in that position, right? So right now we're at a negative, okay? I'm saying, let's take this sacrifice, make this sacrifice, okay? There is going to be discomfort there. It is going to be uncomfortable, but in exchange for that little bit of discomfort, you are getting that work done during that period of time. You don't need to stress as much about the work in the rest of the day. You're not as behind on your assignments. You don't have all this stuff to get done, right? And so it is a net positive, even though there's going to be that little bit of, discomfort that comes from not checking your phone right when you feel like it, okay? It's good for you, okay? It's good for the work. It's good for your mental. It's going to be good for so much. So I'm just emphasizing the point, okay? It is so important that you do not touch your phone once during this work block, okay? We're sitting down. We're just dedicating this time to this work, okay? Afterwards, you can respond to your friends. You can talk to them, okay? We don't want to be like a recluse who, lives in their basement studying all day. That's not the goal. The goal is to get in and out, okay? Work intensely so that you can do anything else you want to intensely later, right? So that was the second insight I want you to take about, increasing your focus. It's have a plan, okay? Know what you're studying, know what material it is, not a hand wavy, I'm going to study this. It's I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to do this thing, okay? And also, set that timer and put that phone away, okay? These three things are such a high return on investment in what you get out of them. Now, the last point I want to make is something that a lot of students probably struggle with, and it's dealing with procrastination, okay? Because you might say, hey, I've done other tricks before. I've done these things before, and they just don't work. I just procrastinate. But I just want to emphasize one more thing here, and it's that, when you do this, when you understand that, hey, we're going to try to increase our focus to decrease the amount of time, it's going to greatly reduce the desire to procrastinate, okay? Because, let's say you have this big goal that you're trying to get done, okay? I'm trying to, get this big lab report done. I'm trying to get this big project report done. That can be intimidating, right? That can be really intimidating, especially if you're saying, hey, I'm going to get this whole thing done in a day. I'm going to work all day and get it done, okay? You're going to procrastinate for that because that is a difficult work task, okay? And, procrastination is an emotional response. And so when you have that difficult work task ahead of you, that's what happens, okay? That's what humans tend to do. And yes, you can get better at dealing with procrastination. I made videos about it before, right? But also, these tips that I've given you here for increasing your focus, they're also going to help you with dealing with procrastination, right? Because is, doing a big, long lab report intimidating? Will you procrastinate it? Yes, okay? Is, studying for 3 hours intimidating? Maybe, but definitely a lot less, right? And especially if you break it down even further, okay? Let's say you split these 3 hours into, 30-minute blocks. Well, is studying for 30 minutes intimidating? Well, not as much, right? So you take this big task, okay, and we say, hey, we're only going to study for 3 hours, and then we take that and split it down again and say, hey, I'm going to do 3 50-minute blocks, okay? And now you don't need to get through this big, project, this big report, all right? Now you just got to get through 50 minutes of, work. You're going to try to get those first 2 sections done, okay? And then in the next 50 minutes, you're going to try to get the next 2 sections done. And then in the next 50 minutes, you're going to edit it up and you're going to be done, okay? This is going to be your lab report done. So the procrastination is going to be a lot less likely because we've reduced friction, okay? We've made the task easier. Also, by stacking this work in the morning, okay, we've also reduced the friction because this is a higher energy period of time, right? We have more energy here. When you have more energy, you're more likely to be able to actually sit down and do the work. A lot of the times you procrastinate, it's, when you get home, you're tired, or maybe it's after you've scrolled on Instagram for an hour or watched YouTube for an hour, okay? You might be procrastinating because your energy is low or your mental energy is low, right? And so you don't have the energy to overcome that. You don't have the energy to get started. And so again, by putting the work in the morning, we said take advantage of this high energy time. You're going to have more ability to get over that threshold, that barrier, and get started. Also, procrastination comes from uncertainty, right? You don't know exactly what tasks you're going to get started on. You don't know, what exactly you need to do. And so what do? You procrastinate, right? Because you don't have a full understanding of the task ahead of you. But with this method, okay, you've already decided that. You've already set a plan. You said, I'm going to do these 2 things at this time. So we've taken away that uncertainty. And again, that means we're reducing that friction. We're reducing the likelihood of procrastination. And so lastly, okay, one more piece of advice to round off this whole method of getting this work done in a shorter period of time. The final thing is to reward yourself after. If all you have after this 3-hour work block is a day of nothing, if all you have is a day of scrolling on Instagram at home or watching YouTube or watching Netflix, okay, if that's all you have ahead of you after this 3-hour work block, what's going to happen? Okay, you have no actual incentive to get this work done because you have 12 hours after this to get the work done. And so you're going to just procrastinate it. You're going to push it back, okay? Because you can. Like, there's nothing stopping you from just doing it 5 hours later. There's nothing stopping you from just doing it 6 hours from now. There's nothing stopping you from, not spending your whole day well and then feeling bad and trying to cram all of your work in at the end of the day, right? There's nothing stopping you from doing that. So the best thing to do is to have something that is stopping you, okay? The goal isn't to just, get the grades in school, okay? If it was that, it'd be easy. You just sit down and you lock yourself in the basement and you study and you're going to get results, okay? That wasn't the goal. The goal was to do it while living, a healthy life, okay? The goal was to do it while still having time to go to the gym. The goal was to do it while still having time to see friends, while still having time, for looking after your health, for getting, a full 8 hours of sleep, for being able to cook and eat well, okay? The goal was to get the grades that you want while still living the healthy, enjoyable life, okay? So have things after, okay? Have these other aspects of your life that you're wanting to spend time on, right? We wanted to get this work done faster so we could spend time on these other things. So do it, okay? Don't waste the time. Don't waste the time. Don't, say, oh, I got all that work done. I'm going to sit down and relax all day, okay? Because if your idea of relaxation is consuming content all day, you know that by the end of the day, you're not going to be thinking that. You're not going to be thinking that, hey, oh, that was such a relaxing day. I feel so refreshed. I feel so ready to get back at it tomorrow, okay? You're going to feel terrible, right? So the idea is that we want to get the grades and we want to enjoy it, right? We want to enjoy the process. So we were trying to speed up the work. I'm trying to help you, get your work done in a more tightened period of time so that you can spend the time on the other aspects of your life that you wanted to. So in order to do that, let's actually schedule. Let's actually have these things in mind. Let's actually have time to do these things after we got our work done, okay? So, schedule that gym session at 11 a.m. Schedule that run at 11 a.m. Schedule something after your study block that forces you to get your studies done, okay? Now you got an hour, you're gonna eat breakfast and you're gonna get out, okay? You're gonna do the other things that you wanted to do because again, the goal was to get the studies done so you have the time to do these other things, not to get the studies done so you could waste it, okay? So that was the video. I hope it helps you understand that, if we just increase our focus, if we really increase the intensity of the work, okay, we can get it done in significantly less time. Therefore, we have more time to spend how we want. So that was it. Thank you.